Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
We have, I don't know, I feel like this topic of making friends in today's episode, on the one hand, you're like, oh, friends, fun. But this is also a super challenging topic for a lot of people. It's a real mixed bag talking about friendships.
Well, especially right now.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of my friends. Literally, I have not been in person with any of my friends since March.
One. I have seen one.
Yeah. I've chosen to see a few family members. Like, I've seen my brother, who I have a close friendship with. We're very close. And get along great. So I've seen my brother, my sister-in-law, and my parents, but I have not seen my friends. It's very sad. I know. Now we're waving at each other through our screens. We miss each other.
I miss baking stupid chocolate shit for you.
Yes, because that's the kind of desserts that I like. Chocolate desserts. You're a good friend, Kate. But yeah, so today we're going to share what DBT recommends and DBT's thoughts on how to make friends. The way the DBT phrases this on the handout is finding and getting people to like you.
Oh, that sounds weirdly manipulative.
It does. I mean, at the end of the day, if you really boil it down, that is what friendship
is.
That's what happens with friendship.
It just sounds a little creepy.
Yeah. So we rephrase this as how to make friends.
Yeah.
How does one do that as an adult? Because it's really difficult. So we're going to share what DBT recommends and also probably, as usual, pepper in our own thoughts about how this can be done. But we thought it might be helpful to start off with each of us just sharing a little bit personally about what's worked or what's been challenging for us when it comes to making friends as an adult. So when we say as an adult, yes, people who are in college are adults, but like post-college.
No, I'm joking.
Technically, right?
I'm old enough that college kids are babies now, so there we go.
Right, this is true. A lot of them were born after the year 2000. Just wrap your head around that. But really, we're thinking like post-college life. How do you make friends in your mid to late 20s and to your 30s and beyond? How does one do this? So we're going to talk about some of our own experiences first before we dive into what DBT has to say.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Kate.
Where to start? Well, so some background. In the last 7-ish years, I've actually had a huge loss of friendships and community in my life. Like, I had spent, I would say, my mid-teens up through my mid-20s working really hard to build a really tight-knit group of friends and community around myself. I think I've talked about this before. I don't think I'm relaying anything new. I spent most of my life identifying as polyamorous, and so that was a big part of what the community was for me. Like, my household was kind of a hub in that community locally. And that was, we threw parties throughout the year and, hosted events. We even hosted, birthdays for other people. Like, it was just a very tight-knit group of people and community. And I have lost contact with most of that. I had a divorce and things went out differently than I thought they would through that process. And so I've been really disconnected from the people that I spent probably 14 years of my life, really invested in and really focusing on and really building community with. And that's been a tremendous loss in my life in the last 7 years. And so then suddenly I was really forced with facing the question of, how the fuck do you do this in your 30s? Like, what does that even mean? Because most of these were friends that I made in and or around college, and some all the way back from high school, right? That was the people I'd been working with. And at first blush, it felt like everybody else also had been doing that. And so everyone already had their own friends group, right? And there wasn't a lot of space for new people. So I found it pretty challenging. I'm still finding it an amount challenging. Well, especially now. Making new friends during COVID is like, I don't know, leveling up making friends. It's like the boss fight of making friends right now. But the things that have worked for me actually are going to get covered in some of these DBT skills, really. So you'll hear me and Michelle reiterate these later. But it is about, for me, it's been a lot about being in proximity to people with whom I share some routine values, experiences, and interests. So Michelle and I are friends. We met through work, working at the same office. One of my dearest friends right now is a woman named Chelsea, and she and I met because we were doing in a choir, a community choir together. I've certainly made friends with other colleagues through consultation groups and trainings and things like that. So being in proximity to people who share values and interests, right? Travel, like I've connected to a lot of people that are still friends when I've gone traveling, because that's something I really love. And when you're traveling, you tend to meet other travelers. So yeah, that's been probably the thing that's made the most sense for me. And also, I think especially the more, it's a hard word, but I'm going with it. The more desperate I've felt, or other people can feel for finding friends, we have this impulse to try and change ourselves in order to be more appealing, like have a broader appeal. If you've been listening to the podcast for this long, you've probably noticed that I'm weird. I have to assume that that's come through. You know I'm weird. When you first met me, you were like, this woman's a little weird.
It was the not wearing shoes.
Oh my gosh, has that even come up in the podcast yet? Have we gotten this
far?
Okay.
Yes, we mentioned that a couple episodes ago because I was talking about how when I asked you to be one of my bridesmaids.
Oh, yes.
Yep. I wasn't going to make you wear shoes, but you offered to wear shoes, and how that was very considerate of you.
Because my going barefoot, I don't know if I've said this so far, but it cracks me up. My being barefoot turns 21 next year. So I thought I'd take my feet out to a bar and pour some alcohol on them for good measure.
Fun times.
Anyway, so I'm a little bit weird. And the temptation for people who have felt a lot as outsiders, felt like they're weird or abnormal or strange or whatever, can be to try and conform more or change yourself more or, edit yourself more in order to have a broader appeal. And I would recommend the exact opposite, right? Fly your freak flag high, because then you're going to find people who love you, who want you, right? I was telling someone recently, like, don't find people who want you to be normal. Find people who love your weird, right? Because they're there, right? The more you are yourself, the higher percentage chance you have that any connection you build will be a lasting one, because people are connecting to the real you. And I think that matters a lot. So I'll go into that more a little bit later, but Michelle, I'd love to hear from you. What has worked for you in making friends in adulthood?
Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, I am one of those people that I do feel very fortunate because I've never really moved much my whole life. For lots of people, I think that becomes a huge challenge with making and maintaining friendships, is if you're moving throughout, childhood, adolescence, or adulthood, really at any point in your life, moving is this restart, and that's really hard. And I feel very fortunate that I never really did that. I've lived in Western Washington my whole life. I went to school up in Bellingham, which was the furthest away that I've ever lived from where I was
going to say, not just Western Washington, but like in a specific area,
right?
Like very close,
yep.
Right?
Not out on the peninsula. Like I've never really moved much, so it's made it really easy that when I have made friends, I've been able to maintain those friendships really throughout my life. So I feel very fortunate. I have a lot of friends who basically, we became friends when we were really young, or we became friends in high school, and I have been able to maintain those connections So, in terms of making adulthood friends, honestly, the biggest thing that has worked for me is connecting with coworkers. That's been the biggest thing. And Kate, you touched on that too. Because if we think about what works really well about how you're able to make friends in high school or in college or that kind of a thing, you're seeing the same people every day. So eventually connections may form. And it's the same type of thing with coworkers. You spend, 40 hours a week with these people. You're going to get to know each other in some way, shape, or form, whether you want to or not. It's going to happen. So I became friends when I worked at a grocery store with some people. And then this is how Kate and I became friends, and how I became friends with some of the other clinicians and support staff that we worked with at the community mental health clinic that we were a part of. That's been a big part of it. Outside of coworkers, though, another place where I made some friends in recent years was when I went to, I think I mentioned it a little bit now, but when I had a group therapy experience back in 2017 for 5 months, for one weekend out of each month, you went to this basically retreat center, more or less, and you ate meals together and you did powerful healing processes together, and you got to know each other pretty deeply, pretty quickly. And that's where I met my husband, and that's where I became close with some of the other people there. And so I've formed some friendships there and maintained those friendships in these recent years. So that was another opportunity where I made some friends. One opportunity, though, that I can think of that I have not had any friendships bloom out of, but I think could have if I had wanted them to, is going to exercise classes consistently.
Oh, yeah.
For me, that's one of my favorite ways to exercise, is to go to a class. I need music on. I need it to feel like I'm dancing. That's what I need. So I love going to Zumba classes, or I went to this class called PiYo, just like Pilates and yoga together. But anyways, you go to these classes every week and you see more or less the same people. And I remember with one of the classes that I went to, one of the ladies was like, hey, I have some sports bras I don't need anymore. Can I bring them to you? And I was like, sure. And then the teacher of the class and I at one point exchanged phone numbers because she thought she was going to maybe start teaching somewhere else. And I was considering following her and all this stuff. So, people would talk sometimes before class or mill around and talk after class. So I do think that if I really wanted to put forth more time and effort, that could be an opportunity to make friends too, that I've experienced. But sometimes also it's friends of friends, right? Getting to know my husband's friends, or I connect with someone and then they have a social gathering and then I'm at that social gathering and I'm meeting their friends. And so that's happened too, where, again, if I had put forth more time and effort, I think, that could have paired off into this individual friendship from meeting someone who knew someone, etc. So, yeah, I mean, and I really think that one of the biggest things that's helped me with making friends, which will come up a little bit as we talk through what DBT says, but is honestly, and you touched on this a little bit too, Kate, but like not rushing the friendship, not pushing it too hard. I mean, I'm trying to think of how long you and I knew each other before we hung out outside of work. And I think when we did hang out outside of work, it was first with a group of us. And then,
was it? I can't remember if my birthday party was the first thing you did.
I did come to your birthday party. Yeah. I can't remember.
Or did I go to the Christmas party that first year?
The holiday party for the office?
Yeah.
Maybe you did.
I don't know. I thought maybe the birthday, but that would have been like 6 months or so after we first met.
In March. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know when it was.
Me either.
But I mean, it's definitely something, certainly for me, right? Yeah. I'm a little more of an introvert. I already have some people in my life who I have pretty well established friendships with. So if I get someone immediately asking me to go hang out with them after I barely have met them or known them, I'm more likely to just be like, no, I don't really know you very well. I already have these other friends, that kind of a thing. But what's really helped with making friendships in adulthood is letting them simmer. Like taking time, giving it a couple months before you then approach that person. And again, I think this would work really well at exercise classes for me too, if I wanted to connect more with some of those other people. You see each other for a little while, then after you see each other for like a month, then you start waving at each other when you walk in the room, then maybe you get to know each other's names. It takes time to establish familiarity and then to feel like that can cross the bridge over into being a friendship more than just being acquaintances. That takes time, and I've seen that really work with my adult friendships, where again, we work together for a couple months and then we start taking those steps to establish a friendship outside of work, or again, it could be outside of the exercise class or whatever it may be.
I feel like something that was a trend in both of our things that I don't know that we called out explicitly is like not only this people being exposed to people repeatedly, like at work or at classes or whatever, where we see them. But the other thing that builds between you and that other person is a shared experience, right? Which is another thing you have when you're in school, right? You're all going through these same experiences. So if you work in the same office as someone, you guys may have the same boss, or you have the same coworkers, you have the same similar schedule, right? You have this sort of built-in catalog of things about which you can relate to each other. How you can, oh man, the boss was in fine form today. Yeah, she was, wasn't she? Right? Like you have this common experience from which to draw to help with the sort of opening times of a friendship before you have the more just you and that other person connections or experiences. And that I was looking through the stuff that we're going to talk about with DBT, and I didn't feel like that one was called out explicitly, of just having common experiences. We talked about other ones, and it's funny, I would have almost thought of you thinking of this, but I didn't. If you do church or something like that, that's also right, like community involvement, church volunteering.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't.
If you see someone at the farmer's market every week, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Yep. I don't attend church hardly ever anymore, but I think you're absolutely right. Like, generally speaking, that is a place where people do find
like shared values and shared experiences,
community.
Right? In both ideas. So some ideas there.
All
right, are we on to DBT itself?
Yes. What does DBT say about making friends?
Well, so many things. No.
Yeah, they do, actually. There's a lot here.
So the two things I'm going to talk about are, first, are looking for people who are close by you and people who are similar to you. Both Michelle and mine's stories, sharing, there we go, at the start of this episode mentioned both of these things a lot, right? So people who are close by you, this can mean a lot of different things, but the little subtext in the box on the handout says familiarity often leads to liking. Right? There's something about that, right? That's the Cheers idea, right? We like going back to the same places and being recognized. We like, this sense of familiarity. Familiarity breeds comfort, which often breeds liking. So what does this mean? People who are close by you can be close by you in the things you do in life, right? So Michelle was talking about that, as was I. Coworkers, people who, or we just mentioned churches, people who are at the same exercise thing or at the same club or at the same whatever, right? That's one way of people being close by you. Another one is literal geographical proximity. I know Michelle is going to summarize these towards the end of today's episode, but one of the things that has helped me, because I recently went from living 12 years in Bellevue to moving to Auburn, so an entirely different community, was joining a group called the local Buy Nothing group. So that's only people in a very small geographical area around you. And I've definitely met and connected with and made friends with some people through that group. And it's easier to maintain those friendships, even sometimes, than it is with people I already knew who live up in Seattle or in Bellevue, because that's one heck of a trek. And so finding people who live close to you can make it easier to build and maintain these friendships, especially for an adult busy life, right? If I can get to your house or can get to coffee or can get to lunch with you or something in 10 minutes, it's an awful lot easier to fit that into a busy adult's life than it is if I have to drive an hour before I even sit down to see you, right? So there's this allure about people being literally close to you in that regard, or people who are close to you when you're out and about through these activities. I'm trying to see if it says different things in that box, but that's more or less the ideas that it's talking about there. And then look for people who are similar to you. It says we often make friends with people who share our interests and attitudes. So I don't know. I think there's so many different ways of doing this, right? If you have a hobby, go out there and find your other hobby people. The last couple of years have seen me fall headfirst into the crazy houseplant person community, which I have found I absolutely love and adore. Definitely baking is a thing where I can find community and find contacts. So right, whatever you're into, whatever your interests are, find ways to engage in them near and or with other people, right? If I love baking, but the only thing that I ever do with baking is bake in the privacy of my own home, where no one knows about it, and I don't talk to anybody, baking isn't going to help me make friends, right? But if I look for, I haven't done this, but if there are baking contests or online baking groups, or I actually have done this, people I've met, I've baked for local charities, right? There are ways to leverage your interests in such a way that they put you in contact with other people who share those interests. And so I think that's important to look at, not just like, what are your interests, but are you doing them publicly, I guess, for lack of a better word. Somehow that sounds naughtier than I mean it to. But, right, like, if you're into politics, maybe go volunteer for someone's campaign, right? If you're, into dance, try and go to the same dance event every week, like Michelle was talking about, because then you're going to see familiar faces. If you're, right, so like find, I connect with, I'm not in Bellevue anymore, but I was starting to get to know the people that worked at the Bellevue nursery because I was there frequently enough because I love plants so much, right? So having a hobby isn't enough. You have to get out there with your hobby or your interest in some fashion to help it, turn into something that's friendship. The other thing, when Michelle and I were talking about this episode before we recorded it, I was like, oh, I get to say that thing. And she's like, you already said that thing in another episode. And I was like, oh, did I already? And I was all sad, but I was like, no reason I can't say it twice. So one of my favorite things to say for people who are struggling with the idea of having people like them or making connections or with social anxiety, bear with me, it sounds weird to start with, but millions, if not billions of people hate you. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are, it doesn't matter, right? The current environment of the planet and the sheer number of people that are on it, we can't assemble a human being that isn't disregarded or hated by millions, if not billions of people for unchangeable things or things they like about themselves, whatever gender, whatever race, whatever ethnicity, whatever religious orientation, sexual orientation, right? It doesn't matter. That's going to weed you out from people. But instead of letting that make you think, oh God, I'm never going to find anybody, the way I would encourage you to take that information is be yourself. Just be yourself, right? Like, thoroughly inhabit yourself. What is that quote? I can't remember who it's from, but like, be yourself, everyone else is already taken.
Oh yeah.
Right. But be yourself, because the more flamboyantly you are, the more of a magnet you are going to be for people who like that kind of person, right? For people who are similar to you, for people who do share your values, for people who are excited by your particular brand of weird. So let go of this idea of being broadly, interesting, and be willing to appeal more thoroughly to a smaller crowd. Because you're going to make deeper, more authentic bonds, I think, in that fashion. And, especially if some of these things are more divisive stuff, it can be nice to know that you don't have to fight about this with a new friendship. I'm glad that I knew and liked Michelle thoroughly before I found out that she eats string cheese the wrong way, because that could have been the end of it. Like,
that would be the make and break of our friendship, is how I eat my string cheese. I don't peel it, everyone. I just bite it.
Which is
Kate
so
doesn't like that.
deeply wrong. Buy normal cheese. String cheese is for stringing. Anyway, we've had this argument for 5 years. I'm never going to win. But, right, it's nice. It's nice to have that connection as well. So, yeah, find people who are close to you, either literally or figuratively, and look for people who share similarities to you, especially on the points where you are most passionate and or care the most, right? That's any things to add to that at all, Michelle? Those ideas?
I think the only thing that I would add is like highlighting the word similar, because sometimes I think people can try to find people who are the same as them.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
They realize that maybe they have something in common, but that they're very different from this person in all these other ways. And maybe that breaks the friendship. Maybe it has no place to go. But I think about our friendship, for example, that you and I have. We are very different people.
Yeah.
We're very different people. But we share some similarities, right? We are both therapists in private practice. We, line up in some other ways with what we, believe in, really. But
I was going to say, we share values. We're very different people.
Yeah, we share values.
We have foundational values that are similar.
And
I think that's maybe a lot of it.
we do not share hobbies at all.
Puzzles.
We do like puzzles, that's true. I do not like plants, and I do not like to bake.
That's true.
And those are Kate's biggest things.
They are.
So I think that it's important
when you
to
like
really...
reality TV, which I cannot.
Right,
even.
I do like reality TV. So it's similar, right? To not shut someone out just because you may be like, well, we don't have this in common or that in common or this other thing, because I think similar to a romantic relationship where you want to find somebody who you share common ground with, but you also want someone who's going to balance you. Same thing a little bit in a friendship.
Yeah, balance you, broaden your perspective, expose you to new and interesting things. Yeah.
Yeah, don't look for someone who's going to be your clone, but look for someone where, again, you have something in common with that can get your friendship off the ground so that it can blossom from there and you guys can see what else you may be similar on. Because, yeah, I have a couple other friends who are also very different from me. And if you saw, I'm thinking specifically of my friend Michelle. She's also named Michelle. We've been friends since childhood. But if you saw she and I walking down the street together, you would think there are no way that those two people are friends. And she's one of my closest. But we are very different. So similar is a good starting point. But don't look for someone who's identical, because you'll be weeding out too many people who could be really good friends. So,
good point, Michelle. I like it. Yeah, especially like similar on a thing is a nice sort of anchor point, but be willing to spread out around that.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. All right, so I'm going to talk about what DBT says about working on your conversation skills, because once you find people who are close by to you, right, that proximity idea that Kate was talking about, or you find people who are similar to you, now how do you connect? How do you get that conversation started with that person who you might want to get to know better? So DBT lists 5 guidelines that I'm just going to go over maybe briefly. We'll see how brief I can be. Because I want to expand on them a little more too. So the first thing it says is ask and respond to questions. And it says respond with a little more info than requested. So it's really important to ask other people questions. This is not a self-centered thing. This is a human thing. By and large, people like to talk about themselves. We do.
It's the subject we know best.
Yes, exactly. So show interest in someone. Ask them questions and respond to the questions that they might ask you. But this part of responding with a little more info than requested does not mean to divulge your deepest, darkest secrets. But what that does mean is, say someone says to you, oh, how is your day going? You might say, oh, my day's going really well. I had a good day at work earlier. And then that might lead to the person saying, oh, well, what do you do for work? And you can say, oh, I do blah, 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 blah. And then what do you know? The conversation is off and running. If the person just says, oh, how are you? And you just say, oh, I'm good. It might end there. So you can add on a little bit more, and that can help the conversation to grow. The second thing it says is to make small talk. So don't underestimate the value of chit chat. Talking about the weather is a real, legitimate
So legitimate
thing.
You're both
so
talking about common experience, right? You're definitely experiencing the same weather as a person wherever you are.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And small talk and chit chat is safe, especially if you're talking about, you're not asking the person too personal of questions. Talk about what's going on around you. You know, I gave that example earlier of an exercise class. Maybe you try to, say something like, oh man, that class was really hard. I'm going to be sore after this. The person's like, yeah, me too. You're just making chit chat, but it's talking about this common experience that doesn't feel too in depth when the person might not be willing to go there yet. So it's okay to make small talk. It's actually a really helpful conversation skill to have. The third thing says self-disclose skillfully. Oh, such a hard word to say. Self-disclose skillfully.
You
Say it
got
10
it.
times fast, everyone. Keep your self-disclosure close to that of the other person. So sometimes what can happen when you're trying to form a friendship, and I've had this experience with people in my life where they are telling me their life story the first time we've met, and I'm like, oh boy, like I was not prepared for that. So notice how much the other person is sharing with you and try to share out about the same level, roughly. If that person is sharing quite a bit with you and you're feeling comfortable and you also want to share quite a bit, well, if you already see those signs from them that they're willing to go there, okay, go for it. But if they're keeping their answers pretty short and to the point, they're not sharing many personal details, if you start forging ahead to share personal details, it may lead that person to back off a little bit. So, see what's going on with how much that person is sharing. When my group experience was going on, my group therapy experience that I did a couple years ago, I mean, we were sharing a lot with each other very quickly because that was the environment that we found ourselves in. So it was a lot more appropriate to share some deeper things with these people than I might with, say, a coworker at work or that kind of a thing. So know the setting that you're in. Know how much time you and this person actually have to talk for how deep to go. And to also be able to read into how much they feel comfortable sharing with you and how much they may be comfortable receiving from you with what you share. So
and I was going to say, did you
self-disclose too much?
Did you already say this half? Because all right, self-disclosure, I spaced out for a second, but it happens. But I would think, also don't under-disclose.
Yes.
Like, if someone proffers something a little tender, a little open, a little vulnerable, and you remain flat and closed, that also is a good way to end things before they start. So,
yep.
Right, fine balance of not oversharing or making the other person feel like they overshared, right? By shutting it down.
If you think of it like a door, right? Like if that person is trying to open the door a little bit to share with you, and if you're basically doing the equivalent of shutting the door by not sharing back, a friendship isn't, it's not going to get off the ground as easily if one person's doing all the sharing and you're not sharing at all.
Yep.
So yeah, it really is striking this balance. That's going to be different with each person you encounter depending on the circumstances and how comfortable each of you feel. The fourth thing says, don't interrupt. Don't start talking just fractionally before or after someone else. So employing a little bit of your give skills like we talked about a few weeks ago. So be interested and to try to fully let them finish their thought and hold on to what you might have to say. I have heard some people tell me that they struggle with this, not because they're wanting to put the spotlight onto them, but because they may struggle with attention issues, like having an ADHD diagnosis or something like that, where literally if they don't say their thought right then and there, they're gonna lose it. It's gonna be gone forever. And so sometimes what I recommend, if that applies to you, it does. To be honest, it doesn't apply to very many people. For most people, we're interrupting because we're I don't know, just a little nervous or we're excited or that kind of a thing. But if it's genuinely rooted in an attention issue that you're struggling with, what I recommend for that, and Kate, maybe you have other thoughts you can share, but I recommend that if you do really need to interrupt, to basically say, ooh, I have something to add to that. Can you remind me when you're done? Okay, keep going. And then encourage the person to keep talking. And sometimes just saying that little bit right there can help you remember, or the other person may be like, oh, you were going to say something, when they're done. And that's kind of like a bookmark in the conversation without taking the focus off of them and putting it onto you. So I recommend that can help if that's something that you genuinely struggle with a little bit. But otherwise, yeah, don't interrupt. Fully be present with them as they're speaking. Do you have any other suggestions of how to handle that challenge? Or
well, for the first part, I started giggling as soon as I read that because I totally just interrupted you the thing before. So I like your idea. I was also going to say, I guess my thought was more along the lines of maybe this isn't the literal first time you're interacting with this person. But, if that's a real and consistent issue for you, that might be one of the things to tactfully self-disclose, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's not about, being rude. I just want you to know I'm prone to interrupting people because of blank, right? Like, so just let people know, right? That this is a thing, right? This is a thing. This is part of who and how and what you are. Because again, if this friendship is going to get off the ground, this is going to be something that person's going to have to get used to, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something that I would say. I like Michelle's tactic for really early on. Like if you haven't felt safe or comfortable or whatever, being vulnerable enough to share about that. But assuming this is not the first, but is maybe the fifth conversation you're having with someone, it's probably okay to share that a little bit. I was also thinking, Michelle, a little bit about cultural norms.
Yeah.
With regards to this, I don't know enough about cross-cultural norms from literal different countries, but I know that there are differences about how rude interrupting is seen as, from not at all to, oh, holy shit, what did you just do? Right? So being aware of cultural norms, and in America, there's differences along gender lines. Not perfectly, right? It's not 100%, but it's really common for people who are, raised, socialized as female in America to, quote unquote, interrupt each other, but in a finishing the other person's sentence kind of way.
It shows interest in a way to interrupt and be involved in the conversation.
Yeah, I'm so with you that I already know what you're going to say. And so you'll see a lot of female friends conversations where there's overlap at the end of everything, right? They're basically interrupting each other endlessly.
We do that while we're podcasting.
We do that while we're podcasting.
And in our regular life. Just
and I have noticed that a lot of guys get way more irritated with me when I do that for the same purpose, right? It's not even that I can't wait or don't want, it's I'm here with you. Right. That's the impulse from me is look, I'm so into our conversation that I know where you're going and let me go there with you. So just be aware of who you're talking to, who you are, where you are, and cultural stuff. And again, that can be a cool thing to talk about. If you interrupt and you notice that the person looks mortified.
Yeah.
That might be, oh my gosh, it looks like that really bothered you. Can you, I'm so sorry. Is this something that's a really big deal for you? Right. Being attuned to that other person and finding out, where they are on that. Because Michelle and I interrupt each other fucking incessantly, and I love her. And ideally, she loves me too.
I do, Kate.
Some friendships have room for that.
Yes. No, I think that's a great, I like your advice about how, especially if this is going to be someone that you're going to have an ongoing relationship with, even if it's not to friendship level yet, if this is someone that you're going to be seeing on a regular basis, to give them that heads up if that's something that you struggle with. And that, yeah, there are definitely times and places and people where interrupting is not a negative thing. So, yeah, I like it a lot. The very last thing in this section that they talk about is learning things to talk about. So they say, watch others, read, increase your activities and experiences. I admittedly am awful at knowing what is going on in the world. I don't watch the news. And growing up, I fairly sheltered household. I mean, still with a lot of my peers, they'll reference TV shows or music from our childhood, and I'm like, I never watched that show, I never heard that song, I never saw that movie. Whatever it is, I am not up to date on a lot of pop culture things or current events in the world. However, if you are really wanting to set your sights on forming friendships with people, this is a great way to do your homework a little bit. This is something you can do on your own time, so that if somebody is trying to start a conversation with you, and if they're like, oh my God, did you hear about blah, blah, blah? Instead of being like, no, I don't know what you're talking about, you can say, oh my gosh, yeah, I did hear about that. And then you guys can start talking about it. And that can help the conversation go, rather than if they're like, oh, did you see this movie? And you're like, no, then the conversation might come to a grinding halt. So it can be helpful to not expect yourself to know something about everything, because that's not possible, but especially things that you really care about and you're really interested in. Try to really invest time and energy when you're on your own to know what's going on or what's happening around you. It can help to have some topics of conversation at the ready to get started with people. So, yeah. And then the last thing I'll say before I turn it back over to Kate, and Kate, you can share, you already shared some thoughts about the non-interrupting, but if there are other things too that you want to add on here, yeah, I'll turn it over to you in a minute, is this idea of when we are getting to know people, starting conversations with them, all of that, that one thing that can really help is to express liking. And DBT says selectively. So really what I think they mean by that is make sure that you're getting a good gut feeling vibe from this person that you are interacting with. Know if it's appropriate to express liking for them based off of the context that you find yourself in. Expressing liking, and again, we're talking, when I say the word liking, I am not meaning a romantic or sexual type of liking, right? This is a conversation about friendship. But there may be certain times where it would not be appropriate to express liking towards your boss or somebody who's in a position of power over you. But it may be appropriate to give your coworker a compliment or things like that. So if we think about the exercise class example that I said, maybe it's something where you tell the person who's standing next to you, oh, I really like your leggings, or, just giving compliments really, or to say, oh my gosh, that part of class was so hard, but you seem to do a really good job. Like, you did awesome with it. Whatever it is, but letting the person know that there's something that you appreciate about them or like about them. So figuring out ways to give compliments and praise sprinkled throughout here and there. DBT says further, express genuine liking for the other person. So don't just spew off compliments that you don't really mean. People can read through that. They can tell when it's fake. So make sure it's something that you genuinely feel and believe when you are giving a compliment. It says don't try to suck up to the other person or grovel. It also says find things to compliment that are not super obvious. Sometimes that can feel really good when it feels like you're really being seen by another person. So dig a little deeper. Yes, complimenting what someone's wearing or someone's appearance, those are pretty easy things to compliment. But maybe especially if you have spent some time with this person on an ongoing basis, maybe you notice how they're always helpful to other people. Whatever it is, and you can just say like, hey, I've really noticed that that you seem really helpful, and like I just want to say I really appreciate that. It's nice knowing that there's someone like that around here, or whatever it may be. But trying to compliment them on maybe some other things that might be less obvious can really land with people. It says don't praise too much too often and never use compliments to obtain favors. So again, do this when it's coming from a genuine place, but it can really show someone else that you notice them, that you're paying attention, that you appreciate them. These can all be great things to lay a foundation with when a friendship is beginning. We're more likely to want to become friends with someone who we feel like is really seeing and appreciating us than somebody who has never said 2 words to us. Because like Kate said, that familiarity can breed comfort, I think you said, and then that comfortability can breed liking. So, you know, having that person feel really comfortable around you can then help a friendship to bloom. So, yeah.
Nice.
Any other thoughts you want to add on, Kate, to anything that I was talking about?
I think you covered most of it. I do like the little subtext in that box where it says we often like the people we think like us.
Yeah, it does say that.
That is, it's so true, right? Like, it's attractive in the, again, not sexual romantic, but just like literally attractive to feel seen, right? To like have someone like us, right? That is a bit of a pull. Also sort of the similar but other side of the coin, I guess, is, all right, I don't know, where's my disclaimer note? I am labeling this thing with the words that my lovely husband has always used to describe it. I could be totally wrong, and maybe it's not called this. So there's my disclaimer, because I have not Googled this now that I realize it. But he always says it's the Ben Franklin effect. I don't know if that's actually what it's called. But we also tend to like people more that we do nice things for.
Oh,
like,
yeah. I think
we
you
basically
mentioned that in a recent episode, too. I can't remember which one, but yeah.
Basically want our behaviors to make sense. So if we're complimenting someone, if we're doing small favors for them, if we're, I don't know, again, I keep thinking about the office scenario. If you're like, oh, I'm going to go make a bunch of copies of this, you know, want me to take your copies with you and make them, you know, while I'm there? You are going to like that person more. They're going to like you more, but you're also going to like them more because you're doing them this favor. And that's how our brains work. We're like, well, if you're doing this person a favor, we must like them. So it actually helps to increase, you know, basically it helps with that feedback loop, I guess is what I would say. Like doing nice things for people not only makes them like you more, but makes you like them more as well. I think it's about the only thing I would add there.
Yeah, nice. Good thoughts.
All right, let's see. We're getting there. So this next bit is about, all right, well, I don't want to put this. It's about joining group conversations. I read this and I was like, oh, it's COVID. Like, I got very schmopey because I was like, so I guess I would say this next bit is for later. This is advice for later when we can do this shit again. But I like the little subject that says, if we wait for people to approach us, we may never have friends. Just a little bit harsh, but it is the idea, right? There's this, so many people I hear say things like, well, they never approached me. They never asked me a thing. They never did this. They never did whatever. And I was like, well, but neither did you. Right. So if everyone was acting based on the rationale that you're currently acting on, then of course they didn't approach you. Right? Because they were saying, well, they didn't approach me, and they did. Like, everyone can be saying this about each other, and someone has to fucking do the thing, or nothing's going to happen, right? So if you're really looking, they're like, this is a time in my life where I want to be building friendships, I want to be building community, and I want to be making these connections. You might have to be the one to do the thing. Right? Because by your rationale, that same person has just as few reasons to do the thing for you. Right? So somebody's got to, and turns out, hey, you're the one that you can control. So if you're looking for friends, be willing to make the first move towards that person. First move. That also sounds very romantic. Isn't that funny?
It does a little bit. The other thing that I'm thinking of that feels important to add is what I think holds a lot of people back from doing this, which sounds romantic as well, is this fear of rejection. We worry that if we go to someone, and like if I were to come up to you at work and be like, hey, Kate, do you want to like go out for a drink after work or something? Like, let's go hang out. And if I'm worried, and let's say you do say, no, I can't, or whatever. Oh, I just got rejected. Like, you turned me down. You said no. And then I might be like, oh, okay. It doesn't feel good to put yourself out there, again, whether it's romantically or with friendship, to say, hey, come do this thing with me. And for the person to say, no, it doesn't feel good. And I think that fear holds a lot of people back. So it's recognizing you may, what's that expression, like throw something at the wall and see what sticks. Yeah, like you may try with multiple different people, and not everyone is going to say yes to you, but hopefully someone eventually will be like, yeah, I'd love to go out for coffee after the exercise class sometime, or whatever it is. Hopefully you will eventually find success, but in putting yourself out there, you may experience a lot of rejection, and that's normal, and keep doing it anyways.
Yeah, you're right, which is super scary, right? Mm-hmm. So this does require that you have maybe something like in your back pocket to soothe yourself with, right? Yeah. One of the things I talk about a lot is remembering that you don't like everyone either, right? It's totally possible someone could approach you and you be the one doing the rejecting. Yeah. And not because you hate that person, not because they're disgusting, not because they're worthless, right? But just because maybe your life is too full and busy, right? It could have literally nothing to do with the other person. Or maybe you just don't have that same, and here we go sounding romantic or sexual again, chemistry, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't say anything bad about the other person. It's just, there isn't that spark of interest, right? So try and put yourself in the shoe of the other and realize that there are plenty of reasons why you could reject someone, why you could behave the exact same way that aren't an insult to that other person, right? Doesn't actually mean anything bad, or sometimes doesn't mean anything at all about that other person. And so for me, that's something that I've learned and something I encourage in a lot of my clients is that idea of there's so much more than one story to tell. Try and prepare yourself to tell a more comfortable story rather than the worst possible story, right? Instead of they rejected me because I'm, I don't know, ugly, stupid, awful, and no one would ever want to spend time with me. Perhaps they rejected me, but you know what? I hear them talking about how busy their life is all the time anyway. Maybe this just wasn't a good time, whatever. Mm-hmm. Specifically, DBT is talking about a lot of joining group conversations. So this is something where you might, I don't know, you're at the office holiday party, or you're out with friends at a bar, or you're, I don't know, at the line dancing convention. I don't know, what do they do? Line dancing dance?
My friend Elise does contra dancing.
Contra dancing, right? Let's do whatever. You're at a place where there are already multiple humans.
Think back to pre-COVID times, everybody.
Right, and maybe you don't know people, but you see a group of people standing around chit-chatting. It can be helpful to be able to sort of look at that group of people talking and try and assess, all right, how good of a chance do I have of, for lack of a better way of putting it, sort of breaking in here, joining this group. So DBT has this to say about what these two sort of types of groups look like. For open groups, it suggests that people might be standing somewhat apart, right? So they're not super clumped together, which could indicate a closed group, but they're standing with a little bit of space between them. Also, the people in the group might occasionally glance around, look outside of the group, assess the rest of the room, right? They're not only focused on each other, which is what a closed group could be doing in that instance, is just focusing on the other people in that group. Also, there are gaps in the conversation. There are lulls or lags, which really provide sort of opening, right? Here is a space that you could fill, right? As opposed to a closed group, which is like an animated conversation with very few gaps. It's like trying to merge into traffic.
That's a good way to put it.
Right? There's you ever pull up, you're about to pull out of something, and you're just like, I'm never getting out of here. There's just no gaps in traffic, right? If a conversation is happening like that, chances are this is not a good place to approach, right? This is not going to go well. And then, a couple last little points with open groups. They talk about that the members are talking about a topic of general interest. Michelle was talking about a lot with chit chat, small talk, things like that, right? If a group is standing around talking about the weather, right? Or talking about that last speaker at the training, or talking about, something that's broad, something that's open, something that you could clearly contribute to, that could be a good group to try and join. If they appear to be talking about, I don't know, Liza's cousin's wedding shower. You don't know who Liza is, let alone her cousin. This may not be the conversation for you to join in on. And also with closed groups, they talk about people like pairing off. So in a lot of ways, like, I don't know, the smallest closed group is 2.
Yep.
And if you, and also, again, you can apply a lot of the same concepts to even just 2 people. Are they standing really close together, like engaged in this heated, not heated like angry, but just like animated, fast-flowing conversation? Or are they standing, kind of near each other and occasionally saying stuff to each other, but maybe both of them are facing out into the room, or, other things that indicate that they're not in an intimate moment, I guess is what I would say. Any thoughts to add to that, Michelle?
No, I think you talked about the different types of groups really well, because that was a big thing that you and I talked about with sharing our stories of how we have made friends in adulthood. It starts normally with being in a group context, whether that is in a workplace or, in a choir. You mentioned meeting your friend Chelsea in a choir.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It starts in a group context. So yeah, how we break into that and knowing what to look for is really important. So I think you summarized that really well. Switching gears a little bit, because I talk about this with clients sometimes, is just knowing if an individual is kind of open or closed to starting a conversation or to potential friendships. And some of the things that I recommend they look for is, if they're starting a conversation with someone and that person is giving very minimal responses, or it seems really distracted, or things like that, that person is probably not open to wanting to have a conversation right then and there. They may have other things on their mind, or they just might not be in the mood to talk. And it's best to, just kind of end it there and say, nice talking with you, and try to move on to, again, if it is a group setting, you can try to move on to another group. But, you want to look for somebody who is acting interested with you, right? Like the stuff we talked about with Give. Somebody who's making good eye contact with you. Somebody who, when you're asking questions of them, they are maybe also reciprocating and asking you questions about yourself. That shows that they are open to talking with you. And sometimes even beyond that, right? If you're trying to look for people who you could potentially be friends with, is to, if you're having a conversation with someone that's going pretty well, to try to look for if they are, generally speaking, open or close to potential new friendships. If you're talking with somebody and in the conversation it's coming up with how many hours they work, or, just these other things that they're really busy with in their life, it's not that that person is saying that as like, hint, hint, I don't want to be your friend. No, probably not at all. They're probably just, sharing with you and talking about their lives. But it also may be an indicator of like, this person may not have a lot of space for new friendships in their schedule or whatever it may be. And so if you are engaging in a conversation with someone, to also see if there are any indicators to them potentially saying things like that they do have space in their life for other friends. If they mention perhaps that they are single, or they're new to the area, or they don't have children, or whatever it is, if those things come up in conversation, that may be somebody who has a little more time to devote to friendships than somebody who, has 3 young kids at home. That person may not have time for friendships as often. So, you can catch some of those little clues as well of like, is this person wanting new friends? Would they be open to maybe eventually forming an ongoing relationship with me? Or is this probably going to be a one-time conversation and we're never going to get to the spot where we're going to have coffee together? You can see signs of that along the way of like, are they open or close to this conversation? Are they open or close to new friends potentially? You can see signs along the way for that. So the final thing that we're going to talk about before we get into homework is, as Kate was discussing, you can see some of those signs for when a group is open and signs for when a group is closed. DBT recommends if you see signs that a group is closed, like Kate talked about, people standing close together, they're engaged in intense conversation, just, I don't want to say like, don't do it, but you can try. Just know that it's not going to be as successful as if you try to join an open group.
Yeah, lower chance of success.
Yeah, exactly. So if you are in a group environment with other people around and you see signs of an open group and you're like, hey, I want to go talk to those people over there. It seems like I could break in. All right, I'm going to go for it. How do you go about doing that?
It cracks me up, by the way, when I was looking at this, that they list ones that they don't like first. It's so misleading.
Exactly. Yeah, it is really misleading. So they basically list 4 common things that people try to do that don't work very well. And then finally, the 5th thing that I'll talk about is the one to do. This is how to do it. But I'll go over some common pitfalls first.
The one and only path. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Well, the most effective.
I know. I'm just making fun of DBT.
I know. DBT does make it pretty clear, like, do this thing and only this thing. So some of these other things could work. However, there could be some pitfalls. So a lot of times what people try to do when they're trying to join a group conversation is they just move gradually closer to the group. I have been in group conversations where someone does that. Slowly but surely, they're not saying anything. They're just inching closer, and you kind of see them coming out of the corner of your eye. You know they want to join, but they're doing it in like the most passive way possible. So what DBT says where this could be an issue is that it may not be clear from the slowness of your approach that you want to join the group. It might even look as though you are creeping up and trying to eavesdrop. I don't know if I really interpret it that way. I interpret it as like, oh, this person is trying. Maybe they're really shy, kind of a thing. I've had times even when I've wanted to offer to them to be like, oh, why don't you join us? But then I worry maybe that's faster than they're ready for because they seem so shy. So moving gradually closer to the group without saying a word. Those could be some of the pitfalls of that. Another approach that people sometimes take is they try to offer to refill people's like food or to get them something or whatever it is. My family has a close family friend who does this a lot. And what winds up happening, I mean, even though we're very close with him, he's been a family friend since before I was born. But sometimes he does this at family events, and I imagine he would do this in a group setting with people he doesn't know, is he winds up just going back and forth, getting different people, different things, but you're not actually really ever engaging in conversation or getting to know people. You're just saying, hey, you want me to go get you like another glass of wine or whatever it is? And go off and do that, you bring it back, and then they move on to the next person. So they're just kind of bouncing around and not actually connecting with anyone. And DBT says that it could be overdoing things a bit to take this approach. How would you handle it if the person told you they didn't want you to go grab them the thing or they didn't want more food? And is it really clear that you're wanting to join the group? The person might not realize that what you're really wanting to do is to actually get into the conversation. They might just think you're trying to be nice.
Like a good
so
host
do that one
or
thing and they're like, cool, thanks.
Person. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. They don't realize you're trying to get in on the conversation. Another option is to just stand beside people and try to chip in on their conversation. This is, I'll admit, what I typically have done in the past when I've tried to join group conversations. So I get up close to the group and I try to just chime in. Like I wait for an opening and then I try to say something. I wait for a topic that I know something about and then I just chime in. Again, I think this is a pretty common one, but the downfall of it is that you haven't been invited to join the group. And it says here, what exactly you're going to say when you chip in. So again, sometimes the experience that I've had is people kind of look at me if I chime in, they kind of nod. But more often, I think historically, I've tried to do this with groups that are probably pretty closed, and that does not go well. That does not go well at all. You're going to have more success with an open group, but still, they may have these questions of like, who are you? We don't even know your name. Like, and you're just kind of butting in. It can come across that way. So those are the pitfalls of that one. The fourth option that DBT does not recommend, which also I think people can take pretty commonly, is to go up and introduce yourself. That sounds really good on paper. It does. It sounds good to just be like, rather than the passive approach of moving gradually closer to the group, to just go up and say, hi, my name's Michelle. What's your name? Doesn't sound too bad. The downfall with this is that you have to wait for an opening to introduce yourself. It's pulling the person away from whatever existing conversation they were having. So now they probably feel like they have to talk or acknowledge you, even if they were right in the middle of something with someone else. And it can feel a little formal, is what DBT says. This person may not want to introduce themselves to you. Again, it can be interrupting of the current conversation they were having. So it sounds good, but it also can be almost too direct to just go up and stick out your hand and say, hi, this is who I am. The timing of that can be really difficult to achieve. So what does DBT recommend after telling you how all of these things that, again, I know I've certainly tried, and other people probably have too. They told you all these things don't really work very well. So what does work? And what DBT recommends, I'm going to read it verbatim from the handout. They say, wait for a break in the conversation, stand beside a friendly looking member of the group and say something like, mind if I join you? This is the best, most effective way to join a group conversation. So this is basically, it solves some of these other problems with the other approaches. Yes, you do have to eventually approach the group, but moving gradually, probably not. Walk up and stand next to somebody who seems approachable and friendly and wait. And again, if you're doing this with an open group, not a closed group, but an open group, there probably will be a gap in the conversation at some point. And yeah, just say, mind if I join you? That's letting them know that you want to be a part of the conversation, that you'd like to be included, but it's also not you hijacking the conversation.
Yeah.
It's joining this existing thing and just saying, I'd like to be a part of this. And then they can choose to include you in a way that maybe makes organic sense with what they were already talking about or already doing.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on all of that, Kate?
I mean, I think it's funny because I've probably tried almost all of those at some point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've actually ever said mind if I join you? Maybe I have. But I think it's good advice. I mean, it does sort of show some of the pitfalls and stuff like that. So, no, I don't know. I think that's a pretty good summary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool.
I guess you can also think about, if you were in a group, what would feel good to you?
Yeah. Yep. And I think that honestly would feel good. Rather than seeing the person out of the corner of my eye being just standing there being like, who are they? And, what do they want? Right? What do they feel comfortable with or not comfortable with? Rather than somebody interrupting what I was saying to someone else, trying to say, hey, my name's so-and-so, I'd probably just be like, nice to meet you, and turn back to the current conversation I was having. It does feel better if someone comes up and says, mind if I join you? I'd probably be like, yeah, sure. And then if that person starts chiming in, that makes sense because I knew that they were joining the conversation and me or others in the group said, yeah, join us. And that's just what they're doing now. So, yeah.
I like it.
Yeah,
all right. What's our homework, Michelle?
Yeah, so our homework is super difficult because COVID, but we're going to give you guys some resources. Because a lot of this with making friends, especially when a lot of friendships stem out of group experiences, this is an isolating time for a lot of people with existing friendships that we have, with friendships that could be getting formed but are not getting formed because we're not doing our usual activities where we might meet people. So this is a super, super, super tough time. So basically what we do recommend is to try to find a social opportunity online if you can. We're going to talk about some resources for that. Or if you do have an opportunity to find a social a way to socialize with people in real life, do that if you feel safe and comfortable doing so. Different states and different countries are in different places with everything with COVID
that's
right
true.
now. So in some places, things might be a lot more open than they are
here
in Washington State, where Kate and I are. But to try to find a social opportunity some way, this might look like, I have a friend she owns a Great Dane, and she joined a Facebook group with other people who own Great Danes. So it goes back to what Kate was talking about at the beginning, which I really liked, of what your interests are. Find some way to go public with what your interests are, to connect with other people who have similar interests. And there's a Facebook group for
everything.
Yep, there are Reddit groups.
For everything.
You can find an online community for just about anything that you are interested in, or any experience that you may be struggling with. A group exists for it somewhere online. So at the very least, trying to do that. But some other resources that we really like, there's a website that I just love, and it's called succeedsocially.com. It's a great website if you struggle with social anxiety, or if you have any other kind of diagnoses or struggles that make it harder for you to meet or socialize with people. It gives you concrete tips for how to do it effectively. So Succeed Socially is a fantastic resource. It just has lots of articles to read. And there's a book on the website now too, I saw when I was verifying that the link was still up and good and everything yesterday. They have a book too that's all about how to make friends. So that's a great website. Another one that if you are and I don't know how Meetup has modified things with COVID, but meetup.com is a website where you can go and find social gatherings. So you can find people who live near you, people who are similar to you, people who have the same interests as you. They just list lots of different social groups that you can join. So this works
gaming
great.
Or running or playing pool or going out to movies or yoga or hiking or painting rocks. I'm not kidding.
Yep. Anything. Yep. So you can go through and look at the different options. And obviously these are open groups because they are posted on this website. So they are accepting new people to come and join. And this could be a great way to meet friends, especially if you've moved somewhere new and you are starting from scratch. Try a meetup group. So meetup.com is where you want to go for that. And Kate, do you want to talk a little bit about Nextdoor and Buy Nothing? Because you have experiences with those.
Yeah, well, I have experience with the Buy Nothing. The Nextdoor is new to me as well. But what the Nextdoor.com is basically a website where you find, I don't know how you put in your location information, and it basically is a bulletin board for your neighborhood, right? So it's everything from like people, I don't know, can I borrow a cup of sugar, to, hey, did you see that, I don't know, there was like a car parked here, was that any of you guys, for like safety stuff, neighborhood watch kind of things. Certainly there might be occasionally the, I don't know, get off my lawn, pick up after your dog, I don't know, stuff like that. But that one's very location based, right? So if you want a way to start connecting with your literal neighbors in your vicinity, Nextdoor.com can be a way to do that. Also, Buy Nothing, I believe it's only through Facebook, unfortunately, but I love it. It's, again, very small geographic areas. So I don't think anything in my local Buy Nothing group is more than a 5-minute drive from my house. So very close together. And it's a gift economy, essentially. So people post saying, like, does anybody have blank? So if they have things that they need or want, and they can ask for either it to be gifted or, like, can I borrow this? So I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I borrowed a carpet cleaner from someone in the group for a few days. So it could be like borrowing things, or also things that you actually need to keep. But also you can post if you're giving stuff away. So this serves a similar function to how, donating to Goodwill or something might, for if you have things you don't need or want anymore, you can post those in the group, and people will let you know if they want to take those off your hands, right? So it's a great way to find people in your community, find and meet. I've definitely made a couple of friends through my group, but also just a great way to help support your local community, right? If you have an excess of stuff, it can be nice to, it's great. I'm not saying don't go, donate to Goodwill or, what's the other one? My brain just went away, Value Village or whatever, right? Like, not like don't donate, but this one, you know where your gift is going, right? You're literally supporting that neighbor who could really use, the clothes your kids just grew out of, right? Things like that. So I think it's a great way to give back to community, to participate in community, and also to meet people in your local area.
Yeah, I like both those resources just for, the feeling like you're in a community with other people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Even if you don't find a best friend out of those experiences, or anything like that. I think it's still just great to connect with other people that are geographically close to you. And
people underestimate the worth of acquaintances.
Yeah.
Like friends are good too, but don't piss on acquaintances. They're another ring of your support structure.
Yeah.
Right. So those can be ways to add to both of those. So.
Yep.
All right. Is it awkward self-promotion time?
Yeah, do it, Kate.
Awkward self-promotion time. I feel like we should have a jingle. So, first of all, I want to do a shout out. Thank you to Joe, who is one of our newest contributors to our Patreon.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. If you would also like to contribute to our Patreon, it is patreon.com/dbtandme, all one word. And if you do $5 a month, you get a cool, basically, DBT journal, DBT-based journaling PDF that Michelle and I was going to say I can take 0 credit. Michelle made it.
Your name's on it too, just so you know.
Well, credit where credit's due. She's so much more organized than I am. Speaking of balancing each other out. So, patreon.com, DBT and me. We have our Etsy shop. So, just go to Etsy and search for DBT and me. We've got some cool merch up on there. Please rate and review us if you are listening to us through Apple Podcasts. And last but certainly not least, we love to hear your emails. So, please feel free to send us emails at I always say at. I hate saying at the beginning of it. Anyway, dbtandmepodcast@gmail.com is the email address. So, yeah. And, we love seeing people on our Facebook group, too.
Yes.
All of the things.
Do it all.
Right now. No. Okay. I think we're at closing moment now.
Yeah.
Awesome. We talked a bit.
We did. Just a little bit.
Just a smidge. Okay, everybody. So, as per usual, go ahead and settle into whatever is a comfortable position for you right now. Whether that be sitting, laying down, standing, even walking. Whatever your body says it wants to be doing right now that you are able and comfortable doing. And if you are safe and comfortable doing so, also invite you to go ahead and close your eyes. Now, as always, we're going to begin just by tuning into our breath. Don't have to breathe any more deeply or any more slowly than you are naturally. It's just about noticing. Just about paying attention to the sensations and the rhythm of our breath. Noticing where and how we feel it the most. Just bringing our attention to something that normally is going on outside of our attention. And allowing that focus and attention to welcome us into the moment, into our bodies. All right. Now, from so many people, over the course of my time working as a therapist, I have heard people be hesitant to put themselves out there as a friend because they don't feel like they have much to contribute, right? Low self-esteem, low self-worth can really get in the way if you're trying to start new friendships. So today, I'd like us to work on that a little bit so you feel more prepped before going out into the world. So to begin with, I'd like you to just picture yourself standing in front of you. Build that image in your mind's eye for a moment. And when you have it there, I'd like you to start telling this other self why they're a good person, why they're a good friend or would make one, what is interesting about them, what they contribute to the world around them. I know this can be hard. I know that it can feel like bragging or arrogance, but I'm going to tell you right now, you're in a safe place to do this. And a little bit of pride, even a little bit of bragging inside your own mind is a fine and healthy thing to do. So compliment yourself. Right? Look at this version of you standing there and help them understand why someone would want to be friends with them. And this can be anything. This can be what your values are. This can be what your hobbies are. This can be that you make a great soup. You make a great sandwich. This can be that you're the jump rope champion from your elementary school, right? This is anything, right? You are a unique human being. And just that right there means you offer unique opportunities to any relationship that you join. So just take this time, take these couple of minutes, and remind yourself why you're awesome, why you're worthy, why you're interesting and good, so that you can carry this with you into your search for finding and making friends. So when you go up to that person or that group of people, you basically have this in your backpack. You have this that you can pull out, right? This is why these people would want to know me. And boosting that confidence can really help in pulling off the act of making a friend. We have to be just that little bit proud of ourselves. So I'm going to be quiet for just a moment and give you a few seconds to really tenderly and authentically compliment that self that you're looking at in front of you. And you can do this whenever you want to. If you need to bolster yourself, this is a great activity to do at the beginning of any given day, is picture yourself and tell yourself why you're good, why you're great, why you're awesome, why you're interesting, to take that with you into any given day or situation. But for now, you can go ahead and let go of that image of yourself. And just remember that you can do this again in the future when you need or want to. And as per usual, just let go of that image and start to come back into your body and into the room through any stretching or rolling of joints that feels good and happy and healthy for your body right now. And whenever you feel ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. To learn more about us